Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We'll be presenting on the accesso ecosystem, redefining the guest experience. Thank you for joining. My name is Eric Petrusik, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer for accesso. Before we get started with the webinar, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items so you know what to expect and how to participate in today's session if you're not familiar with GoToWebinar. You may have already noticed that your voices have been muted. They will remain muted throughout the session. However, you will be able to type questions to our moderator throughout the webinar. And at the end of the session, we will have a Q&A period that's taken from your typed questions. So let's get started. So first thing to talk about is when we're talking about the accesso ecosystem, what is it that we're talking about? Of course, we're looking here at a picture of a environmental ecosystem here, and this will not be a biology lesson today. Really, when we're talking about an ecosystem, I mean that in two senses. One is talking about the various parts of the accesso suite. We have 6 different business units, and collectively they make up the accesso solution set. And then broader than that, I would also consider that encompassing the partners that we work with to be able to provide a complete client solution. And then once we've kind of talked through the different parts of the ecosystem and sort of how we work with those partners, then I'd like to get into how we actually leverage that ecosystem in service of the guest experience. So first thing to talk about as we explore this is I'd like to do a quick refresh of how the parts of accesso came together for those of you who may not be familiar. So it started back in 1999 with a company called LoQ, which is still today our parent company, and it focuses on virtual queuing solutions. So we'll talk more about virtual queuing later in the presentation here, but briefly, it's a type of solution for entertainment venues that focuses on essentially line entitlements, where rather than having to physically stand in line, a guest can engage in a virtual queuing experience and be able to go and do other things throughout the park here. So as I said, that company was founded in 1999 and kind of ran standalone for much of its history until in 2012, it purchased a company called accesso. And those two companies became one and ultimately took the accesso name. What accesso was a ticketing solution, which provided an enterprise-grade ticketing engine for a number of theme parks and cultural attractions. And after the combination of the two, we rebranded each of those solutions to kind of start building out our solution set suite. So LoQ became accesso LoQ, and what had been the accesso solution became the accesso passport solution. So then in 2013, there was another purchase of a company called ShoWare, and ShoWare was another ticketing solution. But it was kind of an interesting counterpoint to Passport, a somewhat different focus, where Passport had traditionally focused on online and really kind of at that time primarily online commerce. ShoWare was a on-premise system that contained a wide range of functionalities for operating the venue there on site. And also brought a little bit different focus in terms of the markets that we served. ShoWare is very widespread within the ski industry in North America, serves many cultural clients, and really had just kind of a wider customer base than had been focused on with Passport. So they were kind of a nice pairing, and we'll get into that a little bit later about how some of those pieces fit together. Then, after rebranding that as accesso ShoWare, in 2014, another acquisition was made of a company called ShoWare, and again, it was a ticketing solution. In this case, what was different about it was that it was really an event ticketing solution. So focused on live assigned seating venues, performing arts venues, and where Passport and SeriousWare both had a solution for that, it certainly wasn't anywhere near as robust as what ShoWare brought in terms of, in terms of specialization. So collectively, those three ticketing solutions, again, kind of complemented each other well in terms of being able to fill, parts of the solution to bring better functionality across that. So again, ShoWare was rebranded as accesso ShoWare, so you kind of see the pattern here. And then, so we went for a few years without any additional acquisitions, but in this year, in 2017, there have actually been two of them. So in March of 2017, we purchased a company called Ingresso, which on the one hand sells tickets as well, but their focus is rather different than the other three, where Passport and SeriousWare and ShoWare are really focused as ticketing solutions for a venue. Ingresso's focus is as a distribution system for entertainment ticketing. And so we'll talk about what the significance is of that and how that fits into the picture here a little bit later. But before we get to that, in July 2017, then there was another acquisition of a company called the Experience Engine, and that's where the TE2 name comes from, is the E and the E of Experience and Engine. And this is a very different type of offering than any of the others here. It's really a API-driven tool set for driving experiences based on recommendations of what would be expected to be preferred and valued by those guests. So really focusing on personalization of experiences for customers and guests. And again, we'll talk about that a good bit more here. So as it stands today, our solutions can be kind of grouped into four different sets. So first we have the queuing products, which is based around the accesso low queue solution. And you see here that we have various form factors for that, which is a combination of hardware, wearables, and essentially smartphone-based solutions. Then there is the set of ticketing POS products with the Passport, SerioSware, and ShoWare, the distribution channel of Ingresso, and the guest experience suite of TE2. So collectively, what we've done with these is focus on how do we bring these together to provide more robust solutions to our clients here. So it's really ultimately, as we've gone through our acquisition set, our chairman, Tom Burnett's fond of looking for, healthy companies where there's a natural synergy where we can make 1 + 1 = 3. And, I'd like to talk about that here of, what are some examples of how we've gone about doing that and essentially trying to illustrate how do we think about these multiple products working together and, assembling them autonomously. So first and foremost, how do we drive that? A lot of that is really from the commitment that we put on our development internally. We I believe this is 2016, spent almost $18 million on our R&D. I mean, we have development staff of almost 200 developers from across the the entire estate here. And again, we're continually trying to enhance and drive forward our offerings such that we're not just kind of here to sit on our laurels and collect accolades and licensing fees here. We want to continue to bring forward new and innovative aspects to our solutions here to essentially provide our clients with the best of breed solution and continue that positioning as essentially as the field advances. So to talk about some specific examples of how we've gone about doing that between some different suites here. So first I'd like to talk about Passport and LoQueue. So really the first two components of our suite. And interestingly, they actually were working together to a great extent for years before we ever came together as one company. Six Flags is one of the larger customers for both Passport and for LoQueue. And so where LoQueue was providing the FastPass solution for the Six Flags parks and still does today, Passport was providing the web store for it. And so that is an important offering of the types of things they want to make make available. And so we had been selling the Flash Pass through Passport for several years. But once we came together as a single company, it really facilitated some improvements in that process and that experience for mutual benefit of ourselves and for our clients here. So one example is that if you're not familiar, when you go and purchase a Flash Pass at a Six Flags park, generally you have to do that in the context of knowing, well, how many people are going to be in your party and what service level do you want to have, and so on and so forth. And the way that we had the sales process originally was actually a bit confusing for that, unbeknownst to us. But it presented operational challenges where it wasn't uncommon for someone who had bought online to go in and realize that, well, they had the wrong offering, wrong purchase, and have to swap that out. When we could be informed by that operational information about, well, how do they communicate with guests about this, and how can we make this a simpler process, we were able to make enhancements in the online store that made that much smoother and much more user-friendly, and accordingly conversion rates skyrocketed too. Conversely, on-site, when you're walking in and buying a Flash Pass, there's a certain amount of education that needs to happen with the guest about what virtual queuing is and how that works, and how you leverage this within the park. Well, when we're selling that to someone in advance, we have some opportunities to engage with them in advance and help bridge some of that, such that it created some opportunities for streamlining the guest experience when they arrived at the park. That if you had bought in advance, if you've gotten your information about how this works and what to expect, well, then here you can use this barcode and go and pick up, at an express window at some locations. Beyond that, the operational experience provided and the insight into the sales process enabled us to create some different product options. And again, collectively, there was a synergy between the two, and where the teams are working directly together as part of the same operator, which in turn brought those benefits to our client. It'll be a recurring theme as we talk through all these various types of integrations. It's not that this would have been impossible to do if we weren't part of the same company here, but because it's all part of one company here, it's not the venue's responsibility to try to marshal the interest and drive the program here. We're doing that ourselves and kind of bringing that forward. And I think you'll see that in some of our other examples here as well. So the next example is accesso Passport and accesso SeriousWare. I mentioned that this was sort of a natural pairing where so SeriousWare is actually a very highly functional system. There's quite a bit of range of what that system can do here, and eCommerce is certainly part of that. There's an eCommerce module that you can purchase as part of your solution here. It's a very different model than how Passport goes about it, though, because Passport solution is hosted at our enterprise data center. You work in conjunction with an account team that provides you expert advice and essentially really kind of run your e-commerce experience for you. Under SeriousWare, because it's an on-premise solution, you're responsible for doing all that yourself. You customize the e-commerce components to be appropriate for your venue. You're responsible for the hosting. You're responsible for the maintenance of that. And we've found, really, I mean, this has probably been our most successful and common bridge between the two different products. There's over a dozen clients that are using both. Some of those clients felt that there was great value in leveraging the Passport e-commerce solution. And so we've focused a good bit of energy on building up the interface that are between the two products and allowing us to sell certain types of offerings from common capacity pools, allow real-time exchange of information. One great example of that is the member benefits, as you see on the slide here, where, for example, if you're a cultural attraction where your annual membership conveys certain numbers of free tickets or certain types of discounts or something like that, we've set up those types of interfaces to be able to access that and leverage that and view that from directly within the Passport e-commerce experience. And really, that's just one kind of example here. But by building up more robust functionality between the two systems here, we've been able to bring forward, again, more robust solutions for our clients here. Another example recently from this year is the accesso ShoWare Center. So The accesso ShoWare Center is a sports arena in Kent, Washington, for which we are actually the title sponsor here, and they've had a long-standing relationship with ShoWare as their box office solution. But in 2017, we deployed SeriousWare in their food and beverage locations as well, too. And that was really kind of a unique type of ancillary offering here for a box office solution, was to be able to serve food and beverage and again bring forward some of those other types of functionalities that the SerioWare solution provides. Again, being able to build those kinds of connections between the system from within our walls, and then bring that forward as a unified offering, certainly provides a kind of a unique angle within the market, and is able to help drive that value for our consumers, or I'm sorry, excuse me, our clients. So those are a few examples of how, when we talk about the ecosystem from within the accesso suite, we look at collectively how do we continue to make those work better together, to enhance that for better revenue, better experiences, more powerful offerings here. But similarly, when we talk about beyond the accesso business suite, and we talk about our external partners, I think the same holds there as well too. So this is not even a comprehensive list of everyone that we interface with here. There's actually over 75 different third-party partners that we work with in some way, shape, or form, be that payment processors or turnstile vendors or CRMs or risk solutions, and so on and so forth. And broadly, we have a pretty open philosophy towards working with those. In many cases, I mean, we recognize these are not necessarily things that are part of our solution or that we would want to be part of our solution. In some cases, even they are. We may have a solution, and in some cases, our partners may prefer to use something else. But again, if it's something that's going to help you operate your business and run your business and drive more revenue, then we're very much interested in, well, how can we help facilitate that? How can we provide data? How can we provide functionality by setting up those interfaces and working in there? And again, without necessarily you having to do that yourself, it's certainly something we think about, is how can we have that broad range of functionality available to you as a client. So now that we've explored what makes up the accesso ecosystem, I'd like to shift gears a little bit and talk about what are we doing with it, and particularly in the context of how we see modern guest engagement. So I'll talk about that in terms of 4 key channels for guest commerce engagement to begin with here, and we'll talk through each of these here in turn. So starting with POS. This is probably the most traditional and first thing you think about when you think about a ticketing solution is when people walk up to my venue or my attraction, how is it? Am I selling them tickets and collecting the money, validating what they provided me, providing the operational support for that, and so on and so forth. And still, obviously, it's an important part of your solution here. That said, it's increasingly important to engage guests ahead of their arrival as much as possible, both in terms of securing that revenue for advanced sales, as well as just taking those opportunities for marketing and for education. And that's kind of where kind of getting into some of the other models here. So then, of course, there's e-commerce. And it's interesting to kind of look at this and how this has evolved from our perspective over the years. That for the past 5-10 years, I mean, we've certainly made a lot of success out of talking about, well, how are we focusing on driving more revenue for you within the online channel here? And again, I mean, certainly that's a very important consideration here. You want to make sure that you're not just providing a functional means of doing this, but it's a way to help you drive forward your business here. But I call it the new traditional because we're looking at someone that's buying on their laptop at home, and as we're all fairly aware here, there's been a real shift, particularly I would say over the last 1 or 2 years, towards how do you engage with people on mobile and on tablet in a responsive fashion. you can't really take the same experience on the desktop and just apply that within a smaller form factor like that and assume that, well, it's going to be just as good and have the same type of conversion rate and guest engagement rate. You need to be able to adapt to where are they coming and buying that with a responsive design. We've certainly seen, this is some fairly recent statistics, that 29% of orders across our Passport suite are completed on a mobile device these days. So that's not just people looking at it, but actually completing their purchase here. And if you look at just broader usage statistics, and for some clients, we see some where they have north of 50% of their traffic is coming in on mobile. So that's the majority of their traffic is people engaging on their smartphones, engaging on tablets. Absolutely something that needs to be very high on your list as you're looking at what kinds of solutions are you looking at from a ticketing perspective here. But again, it's probably something that you've heard here as well too. Is I'm not telling you something new by saying, well, mobile is important here. I mean, we all have our smartphones, we all recognize that. But as we talk about how you engage with guests from a commerce perspective, it's again very, very important here. But having covered POS and e-commerce, m-commerce here, and sort of this somewhat more traditional sales engagement mechanisms, I'd like to talk about distribution, and this is kind of where Ingresso is coming in here. And when I talk about distribution, what that means to me is it's how you engage customers for sales that are beyond your sphere of control. So if they're coming to your website and clicking your buy tickets button, fantastic. That's great. We have good solutions for that. But increasingly, we've had clients coming to us and asking, well, for one, how are you helping my tickets get out there into the world and kind of helping me sell more, even without people being in the store here. And conversely, there are a lot of interested third-party resellers who come to us and say, well, accesso, you provide services for many venues here. We want to get access to all of that here. And that's kind of where distribution fits in, is that can include third-party resellers, it can include social media, it can include travel agencies. There's kind of a wide range here. But in some parts of the world, that's really how the majority of sales are conducted and how your business needs to be there. If you're in Asia and you can't make your product available through Chinese travel agent OTAs called like Ctrip or Meituan, you're going to be missing your audience here. What's a bit different about it, though, is the requirements are usually a bit different and simpler in some ways. That if you're buying through an Expedia or something like that, you're not generally trying to buy very complicated offerings and take them through a wizard-based process or something like that, as you might from your own website. But what is important and might be complicated is being able to engage in the medium effectively. You can't just put your store up in a frame on Facebook and say, oh, well, job done. That's going to be an excellent commerce experience here. You need to identify how is it that people are really doing that through that particular channel and be able to respond to that. And so again, this is where our Ingresso solution fits in. It's really focused and specialized on this. And really, we spent time this year since the acquisition of Ingresso of hooking them into our ticketing systems here. So they have the capability to sell tickets for clients that are running through Passport, running through ShoWare, and taking a look at SeriousWare right now. So we're really expecting this to be a major growth area for us in coming years, that increasingly as there are other types of sales avenues and the world gets smaller, so to speak, that the importance of having access to distribution channels like this is going to be a real differentiator in terms of sales success. So then finally, I'd like to talk about apps and qualifying that, specifically functional apps that provide value to the customer. So we probably, many of us remember when smartphones came out here, and this is what 7-8 years ago, and there was a rush at your venue. You have to have an app. Everyone's got to have an app, and even accesso, we provided apps for our clients for a while there. And I think what we found is that there can be value in that, but customers aren't going to just run out and get your app just because it's out there. there has to be some incentive or some reason for them to go do it. And as you look at the evolution of the best apps today, that's really where you see the direction going. So I mean, we're looking at the Starbucks app, which is probably one of the better examples out there in the market today of how a major brand can engage effectively with their consumers. So that their digital flywheel program, excuse me, integrates their rewards program with mobile payments and advanced ordering options, and ultimately we'll be using AI in the coming year to drive personalized engagement. If you're a coffee drinker, odds are you probably have this, you probably love it. And just as an example, the value it has, think about going to Starbucks, standing in line, putting in your order, having to wait for it. And, some people, like I said, it's part of the coffee experience here. But, if you're in a rush to be able to go into the app and say, okay, this is what I want to order, and I'm going to pick it up from this location, and it says, all right, great, come in and pick it up in 10 minutes. Very fundamentally changing the nature of the engagement here. And, that's the kind of thing that we look to bring to our clients here as well. So, I'd like to kind of transition that to the section and talk about, how is it that you can be using these sort of apps and other, kinds of building blocks to engage with your clients really there when they're there on site. There's definitely a clear trend in the entertainment markets to not just, provide services, but to do it in such a way that enhances the experience. That can entice greater spend, but really it's about shaping the guest perception of you as a venue. You increase your guest satisfaction by the ways that you can make their experience better, and then in turn that increases their intent to return. So I'd like to talk about so how do you do that? So the building blocks of on-site engagements we see, it starts with, we've just been talking about apps. That's a very appealing way to do so in many use cases because, well, everyone's already got the hardware in their pocket. You can also do so through wearables in certain circumstances. If for some reason people can't have smartphones, or in some cases maybe this is just a more convenient factor, then that can be a very effective medium for engaging with people. In terms of what are you providing, we'll talk a little bit more about virtual queuing here and how that's been evolving. And then finally, again, some of the things that we can do when we start to talk about guest customization. How do we really make those the offers and the things that you get through your engagement mechanism that are specifically pertinent to you and are really going to resonate there. So some examples of how do you leverage these to make for a better guest experience. Let's start with talking about entry. It's kind of a simple but illustrative example here that whether you're using a wearable like the Prism device that you see here, or just even a QR code that's available through your app, or what have you here. If you've purchased your ticket or your entitlement ahead of time, it's a very kind of straightforward and simple way to start, kind of scoring points with the customers right from the start to make that just a very simple experience going in. I don't foresee print at home going away, anytime in the next few years here, but you think about that experience where, okay, I have to be purchasing somewhere where I have access to a printer. I have to print out the papers. I have to remember to bring them with me here. I got to fish them out of my backpack or purse when I get to the attraction. You have to kind of scan through each of them individually here. It's not a terrible process, but think about compared to if you could deliver all those barcodes automatically into an app that the consumer already has, and then as they approach the front gate, you can detect that through geolocation and sort of proximity detection, and automatically pop up the barcodes as they're walking up to the gate here, and or automatically scan them as they're walking through the gate. It just makes it much more frictionless, and it creates a very positive impression. So then once you're kind of into the venue, just to talk a little bit about virtual queuing and what this is and the importance of it. Again, usually this takes the form of working through some piece of hardware or through essentially a smartphone-based experience here. But if you're thinking about how can you enhance your customer's day, well, not having to stand in lines it can be terribly appealing here. And just some statistics from some of the experiences that we had working with our clients here. Once people understand what virtual queuing is, and once they get access to that, 96% of guests feel that it improves their visit, and that's fairly intuitive. That the more experiences that you can have while you're within a venue, the greater your intent to return, the greater your impression of that. But beyond that, in terms of a benefit for you as a venue, beyond the guest experience, I mean, in our sort of last example there, 78% of guests spend their extra time at food and beverage outlets. You think about if you're not standing in line, what kinds of things can you be doing? And to some extent, I mean, you can experience other rides. You can go shopping. You can go eat at restaurants, and so that provides sort of the revenue benefits for leveraging virtual queuing at your attractions, even beyond what you might do in terms of sales. But for the guest, again, that translates to greater guest satisfaction. And because of that, that's where you see the evolution of virtual queuing. A lot of our solutions to this point have been based around premium models, where you get some sort of additional entitlement, and then it's a limited set of people that actually have the ability to use that. But there's a definite trend again in the entertainment market to start providing these types of experiences, at least in some limited format, to a wider range of guests. So when we talk about 100% virtual queuing solution, that means allowing all guests that are coming into a particular attraction experience those kinds of benefits. And some of this has its roots in the not from development standpoint, but just in terms of the guest experience. So you think about what Disney's done with the My Magic program. If you're going into a Disney park, you have access to ride reservations there, and you don't have to pay anything different for it. And really, that's conditioning the guests and the consumers to start looking for those kinds of experiences and those kinds of advantages as they're going to different types of attractions here. So just something to consider is as you look at what types of things can be done with this, certainly virtual queuing is an important part of that, and that's why it's one of the foundations of our solution set. Beyond that, we talked about in the Starbucks example of how being able to put in an order for a particular coffee or what have you ahead of time, and then just going and picking it up with automatic payment provides for a very desirable experience. And we can do that too. If we're working with the hardware systems at your food and beverage locations or retail locations at your venue, this can be done, in terms of saying, well, I want to order this, we want to pick this up, and again, it makes for a frictionless and streamlined experience here. So, collectively, I mean, you're seeing where we can provide some pieces of functionality here that are just making things smoother for you, making them easier for you. But that last building block is really where I think the most value gets driven over time here, and that's engaging with personalized experiences. So, for example, Gartner has predicted that by 2017, 89% of marketing leaders expect customer experience to be their primary basis for competitive differentiation. So it's not necessarily about the new exhibit or the new ride or the new program. It's about how are you engaging with your guests in a way that's pertinent and specific to them. And then, again, according to Smart Insights, 48% of consumers spend more when their experience is personalized. Nearly half. That's very significant here. And just to talk about it in terms of guest experience, I'll use an example of myself here. So I have 3 young children, including a baby here. And so if you think if I'm walking into, say, a theme park, and it's the first time I've been there, first time visitor, that can be a very overwhelming experience. I mean, even if you've done your research, there's just so much going on. You don't know your bearings. You're just trying to get through the gate, get things sorted out here. If you're taking that opportunity to leverage your marketing to tell me about the new ride you have, the Mega Shredder Death Drop, frankly, that's just not going to resonate with me at that time. I'm not going to be riding that based on that I'm there with my family here. If I was there with a different group, then perhaps that's the case. But there's information that can be drawn from the system that can drive these kinds of insights here. Based on what it doesn't necessarily have to be specific about that it's Eric Petrusic who lives at such and such address and so on and so forth, but just we see that there were 2 adults and 3 kids in this party, and based on our experiences with guest parties that are similar to that profile, well, we know that there's not as great of a take rate on the Mega Shredder Death Drop. We will save that kind of marketing message for a different group. But what might be really pertinent and valuable to me would be 2 hours into the visit when it's time for my baby's nap to tell me about, well, we might suggest that you check out the kids' relaxation and play area over here. And particularly if I'm not familiar with that, that can be enormously beneficial for me. I can certainly assure you with young children. You can imagine just what a difference that makes in terms of my enjoyment of the day and my perception of what the visit was like here. And it doesn't have to be forcing. It can be just, as I said, sort of engaging and suggestive here. But being able to take that kind of information about what do we know about the guests and how do we engage them while they're in park in ways that are specific and valuable to them, it really kind of helps fill what's been a traditional marketing blind spot here. So, traditional marketing engaged before, while you're there at the venue, that may be difficult to engage them, and then you can follow up with afterwards with surveys and opportunities for additional purchase and so on and so forth. But what we've been describing throughout this section has been, well, how do we do this while they are there? How do we take real opportunities to engage them in ways that are valuable to them, such that it incents them to participate in them, and in turn provides that better perception of you as a venue and produces those revenue opportunities. Showing you here, this is an example of within our RTE2 suite, there's a console called Mission Control, which is, for one, I mean, it kind of represents the kind of data that's available to you in the system, which, obviously is highly valuable. But, what's really striking about it is that it provides a very simple interface for taking actionable engagement approaches while the guests are there in park. I mean, you can imagine that, for instance, if you see that there's a bunching of guests that are crowded around one particular attraction, but this other part of the park is underutilized, that's beneficial for all parties to be able to tell them, look, you might be interested in checking out this other attraction over here. The queue lines are only 10 minutes. Or for instance, if maybe red represents season pass holders who are going to expire in the next month, and you want to provide some sort of automatic engagement with them that offers them to re-up their membership at a discount when they exit or something like that. Really, the possibilities are kind of endless here, but the point I want to make is that knowing in real time what your customer is doing and be able to influence that on a real-time basis with actionable triggers obviously provides a lot of value here. So just to kind of recap of talking about the sort of opportunities for engagement throughout the cycle. I mean, it's been fairly established that through your website, through your online booking engine, your mobile booking engine, you can cover the planning and the booking. But then as they start to arrive at the venue, starting with the entry, how do you engage with them at your your sales outlets? How do you provide experiences that are valuable to them and useful to them, that help them schedule out or help them identify a better day, as well as providing those very targeted and pertinent opportunities for purchase, really can make a big difference both for you as a venue as well as for the customer themselves. And then it's a cycle, because ultimately the more that we can learn and learn about an individual consumer, the better the insights that we can make. We can make some pretty good insights from very little information just based on what we feel similar consumers have engaged and have enjoyed in the past. But if you're helping us by telling us, well, I'm interested in this, I'm not interested in this, well, then obviously that just refines that and produces better results over time. So kind of to sum up, talking about redefining the guest experience. one point I'd really like to make is that this is not the future. These kinds of capabilities are here today. Your guests expect them. Your competitors are going to be providing them. Again, Disney with the My Magic program blazed the trail on these types of engagement mechanisms here, but they're available in the market today, and you're going to see a lot more of this in the next 1 or 2 years as the solutions come available. But again, if you've ever tried to do this on your own, certainly fitting all the pieces together on your own is a significant challenge. I've always called this the IT jigsaw puzzle here, where if you're an operator that's trying to engage with 4 or 5 different vendors to get them all on board with a program that you're doing, and they have competing interests and other development priorities and so on and so forth. I mean, and then ultimately you have to manage that project through to completion. That's a huge level of engagement and commitment to try to make that happen. And it's not impossible, but it is a challenge here. But that's what we at accesso try to do as that single operator here is. So the technology has the power to redefine the guest experience, and we want to keep that in mind as we think about everything that we do on a given day here. We want to start with the guest experience, which allows us to help simplify operations, improve guest satisfaction, and drive growth for our clients here. And we do that through our focus on innovation, our knowledge of these markets, and the partnership approach that we take with our people that are really committed to working with you as a venue, and see how can we make your world better. So that's the conclusion of the presentation. And at this time, I'd like to open the floor to questions. So Katie, do we have any questions that have been submitted?
Thank you, Eric. We do have a couple of questions that have come in. The first question is, how long does it take to deploy these solutions?
That's a really good question, and really it's kind of a generic answer to say, well, it depends. A lot of that comes down to, well, what are the various points of engagement that you want to make here? As I kind of explained earlier, I mean, we're already in progress of taking some of these opportunities for distribution channels and personalization and connecting those with our existing solutions. And really, in coming months, you'll start to see those coming out in the field here. So, there are some opportunities that'll be coming out in relatively short order here. But the deeper you want to go, it ends up being essentially we just need to assess what's involved with that, and how much of that is operating from within what we have, how much is working with your on-site systems, and potentially other partners that we can work with. But I would encourage you to start thinking about it now. We can always assess exactly how long will that take depending on what you want to do. But I would caution these aren't necessarily turnkey deliverable solutions in a lot of cases here, and particularly for some larger scale engagements, I mean, it can be 6 months to a year to really get all those pieces in place. But again, that's where we're continuing to work to enhance those and have more pieces available to make that even quicker.
Great, thank you. And our last question is, what is the typical size of venue that can leverage these approaches?
So it's definitely something that we're taking a look at here. Is so for really kind of the size of the venue is going to govern what kinds of things make sense to engage with here. And ultimately, our ambition is to be able to bring these types of solutions to our entire solution set. The initial engagement that we're doing with that is we have some partners that we're working with now. But really kind of the short version is if it's something that you're interested in, I would encourage you to get in contact with your account team and talk about what it is that you're looking for. And we can make an assessment then about what makes sense for you as a venue.
Great, thank you, Eric, and thank you to everyone for attending today's webinar, The Accesso Ecosystem, Redefining the Guest Experience. If we didn't have a chance to address your question, we will make sure to follow up with you individually. If you have other questions or would like to learn more about our Accesso solutions, please contact sales@accesso.com. You will also receive a follow-up email within 24 hours with a link to view a recording of today's webinar for your reference. On behalf of Accesso and Eric, thank you for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day.